English football. It's all about big tackles, big excitement and big personalities. It's draws, excitement, emotion and passion. But one of the most overlooked is individuality. A game where the badge on the chest outweighed the issues of the individual wearing it, making it theirs to be proud of. Today I'll tell you the tale of a team that stripped away from its home and lost all sense of its individuality. Because for me, one thing is clear. Football has an ownership problem. So, what is football ownership? Well, by definition, the individuals or groups that own and control a football club. This ownership includes the financial responsibility of the club, as well as strategic and operational decision making that shapes its future. You might think when somebody takes over a football club, they're just taking over the business side of things, like paying for running costs, staff, player wages, managerial appointments, stuff like that. But no, the real thing is, when a person takes over a football club, they take over part of the town. They take over the people that live in it, the people that care about it, the people who've been spending their entire lives going to watch this team day in, day out. And that's what really matters. And that is where our story begins, in a historic town known for its love of football and its 3 cathedrals. Coventry City. Thank you, Pastor Ollie. Very informative. But what I want to know is how a team ended up in that situation in the first place. So let me take you back to December of 2007, where Coventry City were on the brink of liquidation, when so-called saviours SISU took over and saved the club from administration. So, who are SISU? Well, they're a London-based hedge fund that took over a diminished Coventry City. When the takeover was announced, Coventry City seemed like a phoenix, reborn through the fire set alight by the new investors. Little did they know, this new fire would soon spread, melting away any sense of identity that the club had. Now back to past me to introduce you to some very special fans. I spoke to 2 Coventry City fans, Mark and Ryan.
So first of all, what is your name?
Ryan.
And who do you support?
Coventry City.
Hi, my name's Mark and I'm a Coventry City fan.
I've supported them about 37, 38 years.
All my life, to be honest.
I think, Ollie, the only way I can put this is a quote from the legendary Bobby Robson. What is a club in any case? It's not the buildings or the directors or the people who are paid to represent it. It's not the television contracts, Ollie. It's not the get-out clauses. It's not the marketing departments, the executive boxes. It's the noise, the passion, the feeling of belonging, the pride in your city.
That pride was dissolving and fast, as no bidder came forward to save the city. Until 30 minutes before the deadline ended, SISU came forward and saved the Sky Blues.
I think the months leading up to it there was a lot of speculation around about, are we going to be liquidated? Are we going to go under? What's going to happen? And then famously, I think it was SISU Ray Ranson 30 minutes before the deadline we were saved, so to say. I suppose really we'd kind of gone through all those stages. I think if you go back to kind of, our chairman at the time selling Highfield Road, putting it back into his business and then, kind of renting it back. So there was sort of kind of unease there. And then obviously SISU bought us out, and at the time we were like, right, brilliant, okay, let's see what we can go from there. But, sometimes better the devil you know, and it didn't turn out great, did it?
A quote from new owners SISU said, "The successful conclusion of this transaction ensures the future is secure and the threat of administration is avoided." SISU had aimed at getting Coventry City promoted back to the Premier League, with a quote from them saying, "I want to see us promoted as soon as possible. This is a Premiership club and that is why I'm here." From these quotes, it looked like SISU was overall positive for Coventry City. However, things started going downhill from here. In 2011, Coventry City revealed their new board in a very flashy press conference. This is one of SISU's very early major changes. On paper, this change seemed like a pretty good step for Coventry City to go on and do better in the league. However, some fans were left very critical of this, as a few board members didn't even live in the same city or even the same country, thus disconnecting them from the football club on a geographical level.
When they come in, they would have been there for a short period of time, so you didn't really kind of get the feel for what they were actually doing. Some of the early promises weren't fulfilled, weren't kind of carried out.
In 2012, the new men in charge completely failed, as Coventry City were relegated to League One. However, the darkest days for Coventry City were yet to come, as in 2013, talks for a reduced rent deal at the Ricoh Arena failed, which saw Coventry City stay there look unlikely. Things went from bad to worse with Coventry City, as on the 21st of March they were placed into administration by SISU.
I think at that time, mate, it was pure toxic. It was all gone, and actually, it was a case of let's start again, right? So maybe there was a little bit of hope. Okay, well, you know, they've kind of put us into administration. The EFL used to do a fit and proper persons test. I don't know if they still do it. Saying like, being a Reading fan, you should know that, shouldn't you?
They do, yeah.
Yeah. So when that happened, we were like, brilliant. Well, we got rid of SISU. Okay, we're taking a massive points deduction, and maybe, you know, we'll have to struggle on the back of it, but it's almost a clean slate to go to. But again, I know you come on to it in a minute, mate, and that's where the EFL need to hang their head in shame, because it was Otium, then a SISU company, who took us out of administration, which should never have happened. So,
However, with no new deal struck at the Ricoh Arena, Coventry City had nowhere to play its last 3 home games that season. 3 hours before a deadline, a deal was agreed for them to play their last 3 at the Ricoh Arena. Paired with this, SISU bought the club out of administration themselves. They were deducted 10 points, which saw the Sky Blues push for playoffs crumble.
I mean, that was just like beggared belief at the time. It was literally like just ultimately it felt like a Chapter 11 kind of, they do in the US, restructuring your debt and then carrying on, which was always, doesn't really happen in the UK, does it? Ultimately, if a company goes into administration, they're going to bought by somebody else and you carry on. But then that was it. Administration, same people come in and brought us, and yeah, it was crazy. I'm you know, trying to think back on memory now if there was anybody else in the mix. I don't think there really was. But yeah, to be brought out by the same people was, it felt naughty, it felt corrupt.
This was the first of many times that SISU affected the team's position on the pitch by their actions off of it.
to an ownership point of view and a hierarchy, whoever's leading, whether it's a football club, whether it's a government or a council or whatever, ultimately, mate, they make the decisions based on the best endeavours for themselves, not necessarily the fans.
And it was these decisions that took Coventry City away from the fans, away from the passion, away from that feeling of belonging. The owners also took Coventry City away from the city itself. No rent deal was struck at the Ricoh Arena, which means for the first time in Coventry's history, they moved from Coventry into Northampton. This move to Northampton ultimately had Coventry City fans re-evaluating the practicality of getting to games. The cost of getting to games ultimately took the working class soul out of the Sky Blues. Ronnie Farmer, famous CCFC legend, said, "It's not a Coventry team if they're not playing in Coventry." In 2012, Coventry City's chief executive said they had played their last games at the Ricoh Arena and that a new stadium was set to be built for the Sky Blues. These talks for a new stadium were lies and fabrications of the truth, meant to quell an angry and passionate fan base. However, Coventry did return to the Ricoh Arena on the 14th of September with a 1-0 win to a near sellout crowd, proving to SISU that if the club stays in Coventry, people will come and support the Sky Blues. This feeling of joy and happiness after return to the Ricoh was quickly overwhelmed by sadness. In October of 2014, Coventry City Council unanimously approved the decision to sell the Ricoh Arena to Wasps, a London rugby team, granting them a 250-year lease on what was Coventry City's home.
Yeah, that was a strange one because it was all around the time, obviously, SISU were trying to renegotiate a rental deal for the stadium. We moved away, we come back, we had that huge game, 27,000, and it was at that point they were like, okay, we're going to come back, but we're going to sign a new deal and it's going to be X, Y, Z. They were negotiating, and then essentially Wasps come out of nowhere. But then SISU lost all of their leverage. I'm trying to get back and renegotiate a rent deal because ultimately they didn't need Coventry City anymore. And there was a lot of bitterness towards the Wasps Rugby Club out of, I guess, just for the fact they moved into our home. They completely, you know, the pitch was obviously ruined in terms of how that was happening. But yeah, that was a strange one, the Wasps coming in. But that also had its kind of this air of owners just putting themselves first, because I remember going away once on the train and watching elderly Wasps fans get off the train at Coventry Station, and me in my head thinking at the time, wow, like they're going through just the same thing, travelling miles.
Now, with Wasps' acquisition of the stadium, Coventry City fans were felt neglected, rejected, and albeit betrayed by their council, as a team from London was allowed to have a 250-year lease on what was Coventry City's home. Now, under SISU's ownership, Coventry City has not been all bad. One major turning point happened in 2017, as Mark Robbins was reappointed as first team manager. With this reappointment of Mark Robins, Coventry City made it to Wembley against Oxford United in the EFL Trophy final. Coventry City won that game against Oxford, and the fans turned up in large numbers, proving that the fans will always be there regardless of the state of the club. However, in that same season, Coventry City were relegated to League Two. In 2018, the London Wasps stung once again, as the already poor relationship between them and Coventry City was deteriorating and fast. Talks for a reduced rent deal had failed, which saw Coventry City exiled from their home for a second time in their history, eventually finding refuge in Birmingham, St Andrews.
And then St Andrews was a very strange one because we were in the same league as Birmingham at the time. Tell a lie, actually, no, they were a league above, but ultimately we had to share. You know, we had to play on a Sunday, for example. We used to drive over there, and then we actually played a cup match against them, which was quite interesting. But again, it was just a very strange time to move out, and then all the nonsense started again about building a new stadium, we're not going to go back, etc. And that all led up to, we had a promotion there where we won League One, all through the COVID when the season was curtailed. So we had a little bit of that joy taken away out of that success, not only because of COVID, but also being over at St Andrews.
Coventry City were exiled from their home for a third time. This was due to pitch damages caused by the Commonwealth Games, and they had to play an EFL Cup tie at Burton Albion. In October of 2022, the London Wasps went into administration, with their debts being over £95 million. This saw businessman Mike Ashley purchase the Ricoh Arena and served Coventry City an eviction notice. On the 27th of January 2023, the nightmare was finally over for all Coventry City fans. This was because local businessman Doug King had purchased 100% of the club from SISU. King was happy to work alongside Mike Ashley to talk about a reduced rent deal, which saw thoughts of Coventry City's eviction fade.
So when it happened, it was kind of a bit of a surprise, which was good. And yeah, he's, you know, the one thing that he's done massively, which SISU never did, was communication with the fans.
Yeah, Doug King, I think he's been really good for the club. Everyone's still a little bit cautious, and people, as I said, people were a little bit cynical because he kind of came out of nowhere, and then all of a sudden it was like, is he still part of SISU? But then on the flip side of it, I've seen certain things that you can't knock about the training ground. I mean, the training ground's like night and day now. If you look back from firstly the facilities, the pitches, the infrastructure there is looking a million times better. So now we own the club, and obviously Mike Ashley actually owning the ground as well. That's like a completely different place. So I do think we're on a massive upward trajectory. I think, hopefully we can do it and get back to the Premier League.
Since Doug King's takeover, he's pushed the team to new heights, with them going to the FA Cup semi-final in 2024 and being in the playoff final in 2023. It's clear to me that SISU sucks all individuality out of Coventry City. From putting the club into administration only to buy them out later themselves, from moving the club away from its home multiple times from a lack of ambition and understanding, and letting a rugby team from London secure a longer stay at their home than themselves. Under SISU, the streets of Coventry echoed of aggravation. Fans of the Sky Blues got no sleep, when the club they love was slipping and sliding right out of view, and there was absolutely nothing that they could do. However, they didn't let it drag them down, as fans still turned up in the darkest of times, and right when the Sky Blue Army were asking if it would never end and it was just a matter of time before the club breaks, salvation would be achieved. Because of this, it's clear to me that the people of Coventry will live and die in their town, and with their club making it theirs to be proud of. Thanks for watching. I've been Ollie Fincham, and bye-bye.
Spend your time in smoky rooms where haggled old women with cheap perfume say it never happens for people like us, you know, nothing ever happened on its own. And while the toilet smells of desperation, the streets so echo of